Hi, everybody. I'm going to try to do a virtual day like this whenever possible, but we're going to start today with a little bit of an extension of the Cold War. So this too now should hopefully get you thinking about the type of things that we're talking about in the Cold War and some of the general strokes, and we'll get a little bit deeper into the discussion as we go. So the first one, what country will the USA be fighting over control over the world with during the Cold War? Going to be us, right? You can see this picture of Uncle Sam here, right? Teeter-tottering on the world versus that giant bear representing the Soviet Union. We have a lot of key differences, but the essential things to really understand is there are political differences and economic. We have democracy, and they have a system called communism, which we can talk a little bit more about. Economically, we have a system called capitalism, while they have socialism. These central ideas are going to be the guiding principles for everything. So democracy is a system we have set up. We have an indirect democracy in the United States where we vote for people who then take on these issues and vote for them ourselves, like our senators or representatives at the state level and the federal level. And in communism, it evens the playing field out, where what you're going to see is if we have these positions of ranking, it inherently creates inequality because there are people that have more power than others, and that's what the system of communism tries to break down. Now, there's theoretical communism and how it actually applies, so we're going to talk about what it's supposed to be versus how it actually is, and that'll be a whole other question. Economically, we have capitalism and they have socialism. Capitalism, in essence, is that we have the right to capitalize off our own ideas, inventions. That if we have a unique idea no one else has ever thought of, that we should be able to profit off of because we came up with the concept, we came up with the idea. Socialism is more about society as a whole, and you'll see social in that root word, just like you will see commune in or community in the word communism. But in socialism, it's taking those means of production and spreading them out evenly amongst everyone. And lastly, why is it called a Cold War? Right, we can use that kind of punny little cheesy description of it hasn't really heated up, if you will, into a full-blown war. So we're not talking about necessarily guns and bullets, us versus the Soviet Union, but there's going to be a lot of wars inside of this. So it's really the term for an era rather than a singular event. But it's us going to be fighting this war for influence over the globe, and we're going to infiltrate other countries, as will they. And so we'll kind of have what they sometimes call puppet wars, where we're going to be supporting one side in the war and the Soviet Union is going to be supporting another. And we're really trying to back people or force people to really embrace our ideas, whether by choice or by force. So let's dive into the topic a little bit deeper today. So, the Cold War sometimes is described as beginning the moment the atomic bomb is dropped, that when one war ends, the other one begins. So, we're going to see this kind of trend that what makes the USA and USSR turn into enemies. Now, notice they don't say from friends to enemies. We weren't really friends, but we were allies. The enemy of my enemy was my friend. We both were at war with Germany, and that was about it. It's not that we had similar ideas because we didn't. It's not that we had similar values necessarily because we didn't. We just had a common enemy. So we're going to look at kind of where the United States stands in this bigger picture. Post World War II, our number one goal, just kind of like after World War I, but we're going to take a much more active role in this, is rebuilding Europe, trying to avoid another war. We saw what happened with the Treaty of Versailles. That didn't work too well, so let's try to switch this up to make sure that we don't actually have another war. We're really going to push to achieve this with expanding our idea of what freedom really is, giving the people the choice. Free elections in Eastern Europe. We're going to do this and try to enforce this, not allow other countries or radical groups in other countries from taking a foothold with our military superiority. We're really going to invest in our military, and that military industry is really going to boom and turn America into what we really see today. And we're going to have to see, there's debates about should America be the world police. It's going to get us into a lot of conflicts, but are we fighting for the right reasons? Does that justify anything? But our number one goal, more than anything else, is the United States is really trying to spread democracy, push these values around the world. We believe that these values will be kind of the cornerstone, will be the pillar that holds up the rest of the world. So we have our goals now. Now, the big question is, how do you actually achieve these goals? Our number one policy is going to be containment. That is going to be our first policy to trying to handle what we feel is this giant threat. Now, this cartoon you see on the right is a little bit from the Soviet perspective, but we are trying to make sure that we keep them small and that the United States stays large like this. We're going to have some different polar views, but we're going to try to contain communism. That's what containment is going to mean. We're going to try to stop it from spreading. So think about if you have a lunch container like Tupperware. You have some container, you put food in it, right? And you put a lid on it to stop it from going anywhere. If your mom, your dad, or if you're making your own lunch and you just take right a sandwich and you just throw it in a bag and come back at lunchtime, it's going to be all over the place. If you have soup, right, a can of soup, you're not just going to pour that into your bag or else it's going to get all over the place. Nobody's going to want that, right? It's going to be weird, gross, smelly, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're trying to contain communism, keep it where it is. We're not really trying to fight. We're not necessarily trying to blow it up, but we just want it to stop from spreading. We believe that eventually, right, with social pressure, it will eventually die out. Meanwhile, we're going to see an opposing view of this in the Soviet Union. So we've seen the United States point of view. What is the Soviet Union trying to do? So if we're in a conflict, we've got to have some era of overlap. So where is this really going to be seen? So let's go into the Soviet point of view. Okay, so one of the number one goals we're really going to see in the Soviet Union and other countries in Eastern Europe is going to be about rebuilding their economy. Now, the Soviet Union is a massive country. It's in both Asia and Europe. It's a large landmass, but they do have a lot of people as well. It's not just a bunch of empty space. Their number one thing is post-World War II, they faced a lot of devastation from when the Nazis tried to invade and they destroyed a lot of territory. They're going to really try to industrialize their country, build more factories, catch up economically, bring more prosperity to their people because there's a lot of suffering poor people in the Soviet Union. They're really going to focus on trying to get what they feel they deserve from Germany, right? Whether that be war reparations, so payment for some of the damages that the Germans caused, and also military superiority. They're really going to try to back up or bolster or support these movements by trying to make sure that they don't get walked all over again. They saw that in World War I when the Germans attacked. The Germans attacked them in World War II, so they're going to want harsh punishments for Germany. They're going to want protection, and they feel that they can't trust anyone else, that they need to be able to protect themselves. They can't wait for someone else to do it. And their problem they see is there's a lot of conflict in the world, people fighting for power, people fighting for control, people fighting for prestige. And so that their number one goal is to spread their idea of communism, which in their mind is going to promote unity, that everybody is going to be taken care of, that everyone is going to be on the same level, that there isn't going to be this massive power hungry force pushing throughout the world that's going to lead their people to being attacked and killed again. So when we really look at this, this is their plan for the world, and these plans don't necessarily match up. But even though they may have different goals about what they want to do, we can see a lot of similarities here, hopefully. They're both trying to rebuild the world and make everything a little bit more stable. Where they're really trying to do that, they feel the only way they can do it is if they beef up their military and they make themselves strong so they don't get pushed around and bullied again. And so really their number one goal is to spread their own ideas. Now they're very different ideas, communism versus democracy, but this similar trend, they're going to try to achieve the same goals, but in essence, the methodology is going to be the same, but what they're trying to pass around isn't, and that is going to cause a massive amount of conflict around the globe. So we have this real division. We have this type of discussion that we have going on here, and a term that we can sort of use. And if you notice on the map, there's kind of this little weird white line dividing the world, and it's sometimes described as the Iron Curtain. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Winston Churchill, major leader in World War II, often describes the political divisions and geographical divisions as like an iron curtain between Eastern Europe, where communism is, you see these countries represented by red, and Western Europe represented by democracy in the blue. Now, this is not a physical wall, it's a metaphor, it's symbolic. It's something that is used to represent that there's a division. You can't see through a giant piece of metal, a curtain, right? Imagine if all your drapes or your curtains around your house or in your room were made of metal. You can't see through it to the other side. It's solid, it's not moving, it's unwavering. And that's the type of division we're talking about. It's hardcore, set in division. We can see a lot of different political cartoons like the world is actually divided. Now, there will be in the future a physical wall that is built dividing the East where communism is found and the West where democracy is found. But at this time, there is no such thing. Now, if you'll notice, a lot of these countries where the Soviet Union has influence, we see the massive chunk of the Soviet Union. We see this ex kind of Austro-Hungarian Empire in Hungary, Yugoslavia, Romania, Bulgaria, Albania, right? And we even see East Germany, Czechoslovakia, and Poland. This is really where it's going to be. But notice that the Western half is very gray or blue. These are areas where the Soviet Union will not have a lot of influence. These are a lot of the old American allies. We don't have a long history of Eastern European alliances. We have a long history of Western European alliances. So the western part of Europe is going to be split between that and the eastern part of Europe. The western part of Europe heavily supported by the United States, the eastern part of Europe heavily supported by the Soviet Union. Now, it's a lot of big picture things, and this Cold War is kind of described as the East versus the West, democracy versus communism, socialism versus capitalism. And we're going to continue to discuss. This is not the first, this is not the last time that we're talking about this, though. We're going to talk about this for quite some time to come. Now, what you're going to do after this, look at that little iron curtain there, right, is one great resource that you're going to want to check out is this Dr. Seuss book. I love Dr. Seuss. Every great childhood had Dr. Seuss in it. But you're going to be reading this. It's a little bit lesser known, but a lot of times it's an analogy for the Cold War. So I want you to listen to this story. You can find the videos on YouTube or a link that I can send you. But what you're going to do is you're going to listen to this cartoon depiction of the book. It's like somebody reading the book with cartoon animation. It's kind of cheesy. It's kind of cute. But what you're going to be doing is you're going to be listening and trying to find, are there any similarities between this story and what's happening in the Cold War? Now, do your best. I know we're just introducing ourselves to this topic, but it's a really great way to grasp of, number one, maybe what are the bigger problems that are happening, what's causing this issue, and then number two, maybe a little bit of the silliness. It's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek type of look at it, but could be used as a really, really good analogy in a silly, silly way. But it's a really good resource. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And until next time, I'll see you folks.